Welcome everybody. It's the CompanyCam monthly webinar. We're back. Another awesome guest. I'm so excited to have Danny Kerr joining us, co-founder of Breakthrough Academy. Before we get started, a couple housekeeping items. Number one, if you haven't checked it out, you really want to hear more from the contracting space, don't forget to listen to the Good Contractor podcast hosted by myself and CompanyCam CEO Luke Hansen, where we not a product podcast. This is about, just like I'm sure Danny would love to hear, this is about, the real stuff that's happening with contractors and hearing the stories of contractors, how they got into the trades, hearing their stories about what they believe and makes a good contractor. So we are up to episode number 16 already, which has been amazing. So season 1 is on YouTube, Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Secondly, for those that are joining us, we just want to make sure everybody understands how to use the chat. Number one, make sure that when you're in the chat section that you have 2 selected for everyone. And that way we know that your message is going to hit everybody and we can all see it. And secondly, to make sure it's working, why don't everybody tell us where you're coming in from: city, state, country, all that good stuff. Go ahead and try out the chat, make sure it's set to everyone, and let us know where you are joining us from today. We have Leander, Texas, Pennsylvania, Alberta, Canada, Ohio, Minneapolis, Montana, Fargo, Ohio. Look at this: Kansas City, St. Louis, Austin, Brookings, Denver, Georgia, Minnesota, California, everywhere. Look at this: Utah,
Everywhere.
Texas. Yeah, this is fantastic. We'll give everybody a second to join. Like I said, we're so excited to have Danny Kerr. He is the co-founder and the director of assessment at Breakthrough Academy. He is joining us today to talk about the important, well, I don't think important is a big enough word, but running that retrospective on your business as the year kind of comes to a close, and not having a dysfunctional business, I think, is the best way to say it. And so we're going to talk all about that good stuff. But Danny, welcome. I'll let you kind of just do an intro and give us a little bit about your background and kind of how you co-founded Breakthrough, and just your story. I think would be awesome to kick it off and get started. So welcome.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in contracting, grew up in entrepreneurship, not because that was the plan. It kind of fell into it by accident, but I did not fit well in school in the traditional way of learning. I'm very dyslexic to this day, still very dyslexic. And I remember struggling through university, and I saw a sign that said make 15 grand this summer. And I said, I need 15 grand this summer. I need to pay for my bills. And it was a company called College Pro Painters, and some of you might know who they are. They're not in business anymore, but they've been in business for, well, they were in business for almost 50 years. But I kind of stumbled into that world and ended up at 18 running a little small painting franchise with them and learning about what the business of contracting is all about. And really, for myself, I wasn't the greatest painter. I was a good business person, but not for any, not for any like reason of my own. Just they trained the crap out of me. Like they basically showed me everything I ever needed to do, and I was just willing to go do it. And so I was with them for almost 8 years. I dropped out of university and decided to fully commit to just being either, well, I was a franchisee for a few years, I was a general manager for a few years, and then I went into corporate working for basically their head of HR for Western Canada. So I was recruiting and developing franchises. And yeah, I kind of fell out of that thinking like, what do I want to do? Do I want to go run a painting company like I've done for many years, or do I want to do something different? So this idea of Breakthrough Academy came out of the time while I was there, just realizing that if I'm honest, and I look at the entire business that we were running, like we were okay at painting. Actually, I would say some of our franchisees were not that good at all, but we were amazing at like teaching young people how to run a small business. And the level of like, this should be its own thing. And how do you take, all the content we had to offer our franchisees, the cool community we had, everyone knew each other, worked off of each other's strengths and weaknesses and collaborated and supported each other. And then the coaching that we were providing as well was like structured, systemized goal setting and review and like pushing and developing of the people. How do you do all that outside of a franchise? And when I looked around, I saw the coaching industry is kind of like the space, I guess you would call yourself. But what I saw also in the coaching industry was it was kind of cheesy, it was kind of hollow, it was kind of missing like substance. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be neat to just run a franchise without having to sell franchises? We'll just call it coaching.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's
Right.
kind of how it all got kicked off. And that was 10 years ago. And for myself, like I don't learn in traditional ways. I learned through hands-on learning. And I figured let's create kind of a school for entrepreneurs where we understand that type of person, we understand what they need, and let's create the most kick-ass system for them to build into. And that became BTA. So we've been doing it for, yeah, like I said, 10 years. We've got about 50 people on staff now, about 600, just over 600 companies that we actively are coaching right now as we speak. And we've started to see patterns, right? So not only do we have lots to offer from what we, I've known for many years about what's required to systemize a company, but man, do we see when you have 600 businesses you oversee, you get to see what's going on in the industry, where the challenges lie, why people are all struggling with the same stuff when it comes to planning and recruiting and financial management. And so we've built, in the last year and a half, we've built something we call the contractor growth method, which is kind of all the things that we provide packaged up into one idea, which is there is a methodology in how to scale and grow a business. It is not a massive mystery. It has been done before, many times before, and we don't all need to go and reinvent the wheel. There is a way in which we can follow to do this, put on our own flavor, so it's still unique to us. But you know, the methodology and how to do this it does not need to be like forged through a hard path. It can be learned and built appropriately.
And I think one of the things that you and I talked about was, and I love, talking about the just being disorganized, but I'll let you say the quote because I really love the quote. And there's a couple different ways that you said it, but talk about once you've already started a business and you're trying to clean things up and you're trying to get things orderly. I guess what is that initial challenge? And then I'll let you deliver the famous quote because I like the way you say it better and I'll screw it up. But talk about that and how that is kind of the genesis of what we're going to talk about today. That's kind of the heart of everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think for myself and most people, I think that run businesses, you get to a certain level of success because you're the most determined son of the bitch in the room and you're just going to
Mm.
outwork everybody. And I know for me, that was certainly the case. Like I definitely had a motto along the way, which was like, I may not be able to outsmart you, but I will certainly outwork you. And that's what had me win in business. And that's good to a point. Like that worked for the
Mm-hmm.
first, 6 years of doing what I was doing. But at a certain point, like I remember things like driving home from the office at like 8:30 at night and seeing somebody walking their dog and being like, walking your dog. When's the last time I did something like that? Like it was just so out of touch with reality. And my girlfriend, now wife that I have now, but she's been with me since I was 16, and she kind of looks at me, she's like, you need to get better at your job. Like you suck. And I was like, what do you mean I suck? Like I'm a successful entrepreneur. She's like, you're not successful. Like all you do is work. Like how is that successful? You're a slave.
Mm.
Damn it. You're right.
Don't you hate it when they're right?
Ah, she's
Oh,
been with me for this long for a reason, so she's very good at just pointing out my inconsistencies and being the yin to my yang. But it was true, and I was young at the time. I was I think 25 or so when that was all going down, and yeah, I made a pretty big shift. And what we had talked about, the saying we were talking about, is just like you cannot outwork an unsystemized business, right? And
mhm.
so up to that point, I didn't need systems. I had horsepower. Actually, my team used to call it like Danny Octane, which is dangerous because they literally like, I need Danny Octane to get going this week. And I was like, I am the energy behind everything that is happening. And if I
Yeah.
get hit by a bus or literally if I just get burnt out, which I do sometimes, I'm only human, I can't keep this train running. Like I have to like structure
The
it this
the
way.
definition of single point of failure, It's like if
Yeah,
I go down, not good.
that's it. So yeah, so that's the idea. And I mean, I naturally being like not a book person, I'm not into I'm not into the details. I'm a big picture guy, and I love to be able to lead people that way, and I love to be able to, sell customers that way. I love to just see what could be, what's possible. I had to get down to the details. I had to sit down and understand like what is my budget? What are my sales plans? What are the like weekly goals that we need to set for leads and estimates and hours produced by the team? And how are things shifting week in and week out? And what's the structure for my company and who has job descriptions and what are their goals and how do I and all these things that I think were kind of available to me, I wasn't using to their fullest ability. And I started to lean into that quite a bit. And luckily
Yeah.
I was a part of a franchise system at the time. I could start to grab from those things, but it was a mental shift that like, yeah, like what got me to this place of success is no longer going to get me further. I need to shift or I just accept that I suck as an entrepreneur and I won't accept that. This is my career. I will not do anything else. So
Sure.
yeah.
Shelley asked to say the quote again. I'll say it. You can't outwork a dysfunctional or an unsystemized business. You tell me which one is best, Danny. But
You could
yeah,
say
you can't.
dysfunctional, but then people would say, well, it's not dysfunctional. But I think unsystemized is fairly accurate. I mean, at some level, we all have to build systems. To this day, I'm still building systems in our organization. It never kind of ends, but you can't outwork those issues
Yep.
because
You
there's
you and I had a discussion about this before, obviously this webinar, and I come from a household full of a long line of entrepreneurs, both whether it's agriculture or in just corporate business. So it spanned a lot of different things, and I think the one thing you and I talked about was that one thing as well. How do you even recognize or admit to yourself that, hey, I lack systems? So it's kind of the what do you do first thing. Like A is the first step, admitting that, hey, I have an issue here. I don't have things where they need to be. And then from there, what are the steps once you've recognized it? Then where's the first place to go as the business owner?
yeah. So we were talking about this before too, but like I noticed this first in my franchisees. They would all end their year and they would say, man, I've learned so much this year. It was a hard year. We didn't quite make what we wanted. It didn't quite go what I thought, but I learned so much. Like, I feel like going into next year, like, that'll be the year. Next year will be the year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just heard that every single year. Not to say that some didn't figure it out, but there was this general, like, I call it like uninformed optimism of like,
Mm-hmm.
you don't actually know what next year is going to bring. You're just banking on what you've learned in the past to be able to help you be successful in the future. And I
Yep.
think at some level, you have to realize every year you grow your business, there will be new challenges and new things that come your way that you don't have experience with. And there's a high likelihood that it'll hit you a little bit off guard and you'll probably have to like knee jerk react to it and it'll mess up whatever plans you had, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not that you can ever get that perfect, but there are things you can do where it's like stop just looking at the past to be able to predict what the future is going to hold, but also look at a little bit like, where am I heading?
Mm.
How many salespeople do we need next year? Do we need a GM? Have we done a good job integrating our project management software to actually be used by our team? Like there are elements that are required of you or the business moving forward that a little bit of pre-work, a little bit of prep work, a little bit of thought can help make sure that those things actually get built, proactively versus reactively. And in that vein, sometimes it's like, what's that saying? It's like, is the dog wagging the tail or is the tail wagging the
Tail
dog?
wagging the dog. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like at some level too, I watch people where what there was their initial idea or dream or vision for the business they had has gone so off course because they've been subject to all these random things that happen to them year in, year out. Project manager quits unannounced, suddenly you're managing projects and have no time to do anything you thought you were going to do. Big project pulls out, suddenly you're scrambling to get cash flow ready to pay for payroll. Like this stuff is going to happen, but it's very easy to realize 5 years in where you're like, I'm not actually where I wanted to be at all. This is not at all what I envisioned and the vision's lost and the chutzpah is lost, right? Or the whatever. It's like,
Right.
and the team feels that, and the company starts to lose steam, and you suddenly become a slave to the business, right? This especially hits when debt hits. If somebody gets into debt, they suddenly
Yep.
go into fear mode and they become very reactive versus proactive.
If you were walking through, um, or I guess let me back up for a second. So like with what you've seen over a variety of different businesses, I was going to ask that question of when do you see it happen most, or when you kind of get that admission of, oh, something's got to change here. Is it that debt moment? And then I guess I don't know how to ask this, but like, is there a point? Because I mean, there's no perfect moment to realize that you've gone too far without a plan, or there's no perfect moment to say, okay, well, I've gotten to this point, and but like, have you seen? I think just people would be interested in some war stories of like, what was it like having to unravel some of these? Maybe so people know it's like it's not too late to go back and look at some of this stuff and figure out and how to make it better. And I guess talk about that of just the because I just know from a lot of business owners' perspective, sometimes it's like I've done this so long the wrong way
Mhm.
that it's almost overwhelming to think about trying to clean it up. And I
Yeah.
guess what have your experience has been like with that?
Yeah, there's something I was taught early on actually at College Pro, which was called the transition curve, which is this like emotional curve that everybody goes through when they're going through transition or change or new challenges, right? And it starts in this like uninformed optimism place where you're kind of like, what could possibly go wrong, right? We're gonna crush it. We're gonna take on that brand new project or hire that brand new person, and they're gonna take all the worries away, right? And then things actually ensue, and that project goes terrible, or that person's not as easy as you thought they were. They need a lot more training than you thought, or whatever it is. And you get to this like informed pessimism place where you're like, this actually is really hard, and these people kind of suck. And this is like you're usually like defeated in the sense of like
Mhm.
you're beating yourself up. I'm not good enough. I'm not ready for this. I'm in over my head. Why did I choose that? And if if you internalize things more, that's the language. If you externalize naturally more, you're like, the market sucks, the people suck, millennials suck, whatever, Gen X sucks. Like you're externalizing, but you're not solving the issue. You're just like wallowing in your own crap.
Yeah.
And that leads to a place where, and you'll know you're in this place actually too, when you're driving from place to place, say from job to job, and you don't even remember how you got there because you're just reeling in your head. It leads to this place where you're just kind of like, I don't know why the hell we're doing what we're doing. Like I have
Mm.
no like motivation anymore. I'm just like a zombie to my business, and it makes you quite numb. And I think in those places, people either quit, they give up on the project, give up on the person, give up on the company, give up on whatever it is, and they wallow away and they create what we call like, I'm sure you've probably heard like limiting beliefs. Like you now live your whole life thinking I'm not meant to do that. We can't grow. Adding more staff isn't worth it, whatever it is. Or you dig deep and you find a part of you where you realize like I need to go back to why I'm doing what I'm doing here and just drive forward from there. And I call it a little bit of like the Chinese finger trap syndrome, where like the thing to do is not actually to pull harder, is to give in a little bit, take some weight off your shoulders, relax, go back to like simple principles in life. Mine is always just like, I live in North America. Like this is actually just a big game. We're fine. Like as long as I can eat, sleep, poop, and breathe, like we're good. But I've built up so much anxiety around this business needing to be a certain way that I've tried to control it in so many ways that I'm choking it, right? That whole hockey term is like you're gripping the stick too hard.
Yeah.
And just learning
Yeah.
to let go in those moments is very important. The answer is not actually to grip harder. It's to like just chill a little bit. Like realize like you're good, you're human, you're fine. This business is kind of a game if you let it be that. Even in the worst moments, it really is. Like you're fine. Most people on the planet would kill to have your position.
Yeah.
And in that place, I think it allows you to kind of relax, focus on one simple thing at a time. What's the one thing this week? It's the one thing I'm going to go do. You can't change everything overnight. So here's the one thing, and slowly build forward until you get to this place, what we call informed realism, which you've been through war. You've got a bit tougher of a skin. You know what it takes, and it won't freak you out as much next time you go through it. And that's where most businesses or business owners get to after 10, 15, 20 years of being in business. That's why you see them like, yeah, we're about $1 million in debt this year. And they're like, fine. Trust me, because I just came back from a conference where like some of our top members have like that level of debt, but they're fine.
Mm.
And they're building out
Mm.
of it and they've got a good plan and they deal with big dollars all the time. And it's just funny. It's just like, just so you know, we've been going through that since we've been kids. And business is a very extreme example. But if you can hold on through those moments and keep the right mindset through it, that'll build you. And that's what becomes ultimately your success in life. Not the things that happen to you, but the decisions you made as you went through them.
I think one, so Rosemary in the chat said, she was saying she connects with the why are we doing this? And this is something that you and I talked about. And I want to get into some of the steps and let's put tools in the toolbox here because we got a lot of business owners. But I think one of the things that you and I discussed was we were having just a chat about, well, what about this? And I've seen this happen. And I remember saying to you, I said that, well, what if like we're the biggest thing you're saying is establishing the why, like the why are we doing this business? What is the end game goal? And my question to you was like, well, what if like their original goal, i.e., to sell the business and give it to their kids or whatever, what if that changes? And I thought it was really interesting you said, and then you wrapped it right back around to the why again. You said, and that's why the why is important because technically it could shift a little bit, but that core why, if you're really establishing what the real why is, that part didn't change. It's just things around it because the why is bigger than just that. Oh, I've got a goal in 3 years to double revenue. Like, talk about
Yeah.
defining the why for people because I think that was such a cool part of our conversation that we had among many other things. But I just remember you and I talked about that, and I was like, wow, I can't wait for him to share this.
Yeah. I mean, so what we were talking about was building a 3 to 5 year vision for the business, right? And actually building a fully written up, like, 10 to 15 page document that explains it in vivid detail. And you were kind of like, that's interesting. I don't think a lot of people would do that because I think they don't really know what that's going to look like, or they're afraid if they write it down, it will change so much
Mm-hmm.
that, like, what's the point of even writing it, right?
Yep.
And that, yeah, what I said was, yeah, is like, but sometimes the details behind it can change. Why you're trying to get there, like the why behind it should never change. And so I always ask people, like, why are you running this business? And they're afraid to tell me. They're kind of like, well, it's because we want to make money. And I'm like, cool, like that's fine. I don't care. Why do you want to make so much money? Like,
Right.
well, because I grew up broke and like I have a fear of like not having security with my family. And I want to be able to have that safety and security so for me to raise the kids and without the strain and stress that I grew up with. Or because I see that in other families and I want to be able to provide that for my staff. And, you know, or because whatever, because the guy I used to work with sucked and he used to rip people off all the time. And I would like to show that you can make money and help your customer at the same time and everyone can win. Whatever it is, like there's like a story behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if like you want to make money, but why? What's driving you? And to build out 3 to 5 years from now and say, given why I'm doing what we're doing here, or why this business is doing what it's doing, what does it look like to
Mm.
achieve that ultimate version of that why? Both personally, professionally, structurally, so on.
And then with that, once you've got the why, so talk about, because we have like the 5-year vision, the 1-year plan,
Yeah.
quarterly plans. There's a calendar here to what you're talking about. If you were talking to any number of folks that are joining us today or anybody else, what do all those things, how do all those things work together? Or where, I guess maybe a better question is, where do you start and get things laid out for an existing business that says, okay, I want to establish that real why. Maybe I thought I knew it, but now I know it. Okay, now what's the next step? What are the steps that we need to take?
Again, I'll use lots of like just business adages because they're just universally true. But like the idea is like begin with the end in mind,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
like if you want to get somewhere, you got to know where you're going. If you can't just like hop in your car and drive and hope that you'll get to your destination, like you have to have a destination picked. And
Right.
those are this. Again, I'm super dyslexic, so I have tried sometimes even to get to Vancouver, which is 3 hours away to a certain spot, but I don't put my GPS on and I do 6 circles along the way, right? Like I just, whatever. So in business, it's no different. And the clearer you can have the path to get there, the better. So what we do with all of our members, it's start, and BTA itself actually, is we start with like a 3 to 5 year, vision or BHAG or painted picture. There's kind of different terms for it, but the BHAG would be like the actual like numbers that you want to go achieve, the big, hairy, audacious goal, and a bit of like a sentence behind it. What's the big idea, right? The painted picture would be that detailed, descriptive, like 10-page document that really describes each department, the feel of it, the staff, the vibe, the brand, and just like brings what's in your brain to life. And the reason that that's so important is because for you, you might have this short description of like, here's our goals and here's the things that are important to us. Your staff will never be able to read your brain the way you think they can. Like as
Mm.
an entrepreneur, especially as a visionary, one of the most challenging things people face, and I face this all the time, is trying to get what's in my head out into reality. And the only way to do that is to have people around me truly understand it. So when they spend 4 hours on a Tuesday working on something, they know what that's leading to, not just doing it because I told them to.
Sure.
Right. And that gives people like empowerment, not only in motivation to go help build this, but like they get it. Right. When I hire people, I talk to them about the 5-year vision, the 3-year vision of what we want to go after. And I say to them, look, I don't want you to come and do this if you just want a job, because I'm going to create a transactional relationship with you. I want to build something. Do you want to do it with me?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you when we're talking about, well, let me just ask a broad question. Let's say that there are folks sitting here today and they're going, I don't know. How do I know if my business is even systemized enough? What even things should I be looking at that should
Mm,
be systemized? Like,
yeah.
I mean, what are some things that you would encourage somebody if they were doing a self-reflection, like, let's audit ourselves for a second here? What if they asked that question to you and they said, Danny, how do I even know if I'm systemized enough? What is enough? Like,
Yeah.
what would you tell them?
Yeah. So this gets into like the annual planning side, but like basically the truth is you're never systemized enough. We are not either, and we will never fully be. And CompanyCam's not either. And everybody who works for the company knows the internal issues and the front face can look as great as it can, but Trust me, no business is as structured as you think
Sure.
it is. Man, I have gotten into large, like billion-dollar organizations that I've just like visited for a little bit and met their exec teams, and I'm like, you guys are kind of a mess. That's good to know.
I've worked for them too, Danny, so I know.
So the answer is you're never systemized, but like what
Yeah.
to work on. So it's kind of a cheesy reference, but like World of Warcraft, that game, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
some people probably played it, some people haven't, but I think everybody understands at some level you've got a character and you're running around a big, huge land and you're doing missions and you're getting things. Well, one thing that's like pretty real in that game is like you don't go to certain lands until you've upgraded to a certain level. Otherwise, you're just going to die in 3 seconds, right?
Yep.
You don't have the right armor, you don't have the right sword, you don't have the right magic ability, whatever the hell it is. No different is your business. You cannot just take an unequipped organization and double it over 1 year, which I hear people talk all about at conferences. I'm going to double the business. We're 10x. And I'm like, cool. Like, it's not that you can't do that. Do you understand the equipment required to play at that game, to play at
Yeah.
that level? And so the
Yep.
systems are the things that are going to enable you to play at that level, right? So if I'm going to go from 2 million to 4 million in one fiscal year, there are very real realities that I need to be able to break down. And this becomes the annual plan. And why do I want to go from 2 to 4? Well, hopefully it has something to do with my 3 to 5 year vision, right? What's the 3 to 5 year vision? And based on that, this year, going into 2025, what are the things we need to do to take the first step towards that? So, okay, that's fine. Okay, let's talk about doubling the business. Well, guess what? Go look at how many hours produced per week, whether you have subs or employees, are going to be required at peak season. Do you have enough people to even produce that kind of work? Do you have enough
Mhm.
subcontractors? How fast is it going to, how long is it going to take you to get those types of people and to get the types of people that do the quality that maybe you want? Okay, well, this might not be a thing you do last minute in June to like ramp up production capacity. This might be something you start in like April or March, right? Okay, cool. So on the sales side, how many leads, estimates, and jobs need to be booked per week, again, at peak season? How many calendar spots is that going to take from a salesperson? How much physical time is that going to take? Okay, how many salespeople do you need? Oh, interesting. Do you need someone to manage those salespeople? Because you probably can't do it like you used to. You might be busy with some other stuff.
Yep.
Okay, and what kind of systems do you need here? Okay, so you've got Builder Trend, or you've got Job Nimbus, or you've got whatever. Do you use it? How well do you know the numbers? If the financials shift by 2% on a $4 million business, is that going to be a big deal to you? Might be. $80,000 of revenue. That's a full-time role. You might want to know your percentages a little better, right? So there's just things that start to come out of the woodwork as you plan your year, and you suddenly realize the people inequities, the process inequities, the role of yourself as an entrepreneur. Like I always say to people, sit down every year and make sure you've redefined your role in the organization. Otherwise, you're going to pick up what you did 4 years ago with what you're doing this year, with what you're going to have to do next year, and you're going to have 6, 7 jobs. And good luck hitting your vision. You're going to get muddled.
Sure.
So there's thought, and that thought comes from the numbers. It's very calculatable, tells you how many people, like what process you need, so on. And then that becomes the next annual strategic plan. We're going to go 4 million, 32% gross, 15% net. We're going to have 2 more salespeople hired and a sales manager. We're going to have 4 crews brought in by this time frame. We're going to invest in these 2 technologies, and that'll be next year. And that's how we're going to do it. We're going to add the equipment we need to go to that level.
Yeah. Before we get to our next topic real quick, I just wanted to point out again that if you have questions, drop them in the chat or in the Q&A feature, and we will get to them as we go here. I want to talk about why the why matters even more. Whether it's personnel or budgeting or outcome, even just, I guess, saving time. Like, let's say it's someone that says, okay, my goal isn't to 10x the business. My goal isn't, I mean, I just want to keep it at this level.
Yeah.
Same question. Now, why does their why matter just as much? And why is it so important, other than maybe just personal satisfaction, to be like, well, I don't have to waste time at work as much because I'm more efficient. But let's talk about just why the why matters, because I think that is important when you're talking about a variety of different whys that may be out there.
Because business is people. Because
Mhm.
you as the entrepreneur are a person, you have a life. Your staff are people, they have a life. There's humans involved, and we want to have a good life. All of us do. And that means different things to different people. And Walmart can only provide you a certain promise and a certain vision. Large corporations have their agendas and the things that they need to go do to sustain, their capital to their investors. But you get to be a small business and you get to pick more intrinsic things and you get to actually act on them and create a petri dish of what your vision is. Like it's a pretty neat concept to be able to have an idea in your brain and see 5 to 10 years later it come to reality. And that's the gift of being an entrepreneur. You get to do that. And actually, you're kind of trusted to do that because the economy, the world we live in needs that innovation. Large organizations are not the driver of a lot of the innovation that happens. It's actually the small business owners that drives a lot of innovation and drives a lot of the push of our world. America was founded on this type of stuff, right?
Yep.
And I think just take pride in that. I think just to like realize that just because Amazon's doing the numbers it's doing, or because Facebook's, Mark Zuckerberg's story is so crazy and it's so untouchable, it like doesn't mean anything different to you. Like you need to go do your part. And not everybody needs to like impact 10 million people. Could you impact 10? Because that's pretty cool. Like I used to have franchisees, I had 18 of them, and to this day I still know them. And the things that they're up to in life and the principles they have and the values of who they are and how they operate as business people came from my young ADD brain of what I was passionate about. And they followed that to this day. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of those things. And I don't need to conquer the world. So yeah, I think it's just realizing like you have the freedom and the ability to co-create your own reality. Whatever that reality is, should be important to you, obviously, and it should be important to the people you surround yourself with, aka like the people you recruit, the customers you bring in, and be proud of that and go after it and do a really good job of that.
Yeah.
Because one day you'll be like 70 years old and you'll be sitting there and you're reflecting on your life and it'll be like, did I spend my time in the way I wanted to? And these businesses can be really sweet journeys, hard things, but like really neat things that you can look back at and be proud of.
Yeah. One thing I want to wrap up with Danny today, and unless you have any other questions, it looks like actually we do have a question real quick. Let me get to this first. So Brent asked, after hiring on a project manager and site managers, at what point should you hire on, say, a dedicated bookkeeper and stop handling everything on your own? And I think that's a great question because I think there is all the guests, and I think I shared this with you, Danny, all the guests that I've talked to on Good Contractor so far, one of the biggest challenges was that moment when they went from being in the field and going, all right, I have to step back and not be the doer. I have to like, and the panic part of that was not so much that it was just a change in role, but it's like, I knew how to do this really well. Now I have to make the phone ring and generate leads when I was used to just making sure that this system install was done correctly, so on and so forth. Like, so that was the biggest fear. But then the second one I always hear is, well, when do I let go of this? And when do I let go of that? So I think to Brent's question, he says after hiring a project manager and site manager, at what point should you hire on a dedicated bookkeeper and stop handling everything on your own?
Yeah. Yeah. So every year, this is part of the annual audit of your own job description, but like actually let me start with this. Everybody that's in the chat right now, and can you please put it in the chat how many hours this is? I want you to take how many staff you have and include your subs, the people you lead, okay? Whatever that number is, 10, 20, 50, 4, whatever. And then times that by 35. And why I say 35 is that's probably how many hours on average a person is like working for you in a week. And everyone wants to think 40, but trust me, like rain days and sick days and productivity issues and whatever, it's 35, trust me. So how many people do you have times 35 hours in a week? How many hours is that? And start to throw it in the chat. So 3,255, 2,100, 425, 770, 210. Okay, this is why you can't outwork an unsystemized business, because you and your 40, maybe hardest working weeks, 80 hours a week is a drop in the bucket to what you're leading. Right? And so the answer to this is when you start to calculate these things and you realize that like, I need to stop doing that $20 an hour job, $30 to $40 an hour job, even $50 an hour job, because it's costing me in my ability to lead those other hundreds or thousands of hours. That's 1 week, right? Times that by 52 weeks in a year. And you start to really see the impact. Like your time is best spent leading the people, building the systems. I always say to my team, like my job is to make your job like effortless, or like to grease the wheel so that you can do a better job of your job. It's not to go do your job for you. And so to hire someone at that stage, I usually, here's a good exercise. Make a list of everything you do in a week, okay? And then circle the stuff that's highest time consumption and lowest skill. And every single, whether it's yearly or quarterly, take some time to either delegate that down to your existing team, automate it through some systems or just chat GPT what's available to you, right? Or hire a full-time role for that. So this question that they'd asked around like, when is a good time to do it? Do that calculation, see how much admin stuff going on. If it's like 20 hours a week, I guarantee you that's going to be somebody else's 30, 35 hours a week. Plus they're going to find more things to do on top of that you're not anticipating. And I'll say this about administrative roles. The best hire I ever made was my first hire. It was Caitlin Kaufman. She's still with us to this day. She doubled my capacity. She's an admin wizard. I'm dyslexic as all hell. I can't handle details. And I went from like, basically our sales numbers doubled overnight because she took on all the stuff that was bogging me down. Simple stuff, entering stuff into the system, billing properly, like just little things. So yeah, the hours say what they are. Like, I think if you're, hey, I'm managing 50 to 100 hours, it's fine. But when you get to like the couple hundreds, 300 to 500, and it kind of moves up, I see some people at the thousands, you shouldn't be doing really anything. And the people doing the things for you should be the best at what they do. You should be the most useless person in the business when it comes to doing those tasks. Your job is to think of where things are going, look at the pattern of how everything works together, and in a methodical way, select the right things for the company to work on in the right order. And that takes time and that takes thought. And there was another question above, just like, how do we run a strategic planning like day, or how does that work? I mean, we're going to give everyone some templates on this actually, just so you guys know. So we'll have some downloads so you can follow like the process. There's like a whole like PDF write-up of like step-by-step how to do this. So that should really help you guys. But reality is, take 2 to 3 days, get away from self-service if you can. I usually get like a cabin in the woods with my 2 business partners, and we kind of just have time to focus. We have everything downloaded on our laptop, so we do have the data we need, but we're not like connected to the world much. We think through where we're going every single year. We set up the initiatives. Every quarter, we do the same thing. We meet up quarterly, reflect on what's happened, reflect on where we're going. We make adjustments to the plan, but the actual like vision and goal and the place we're heading doesn't really change. And slowly we navigate our way there. There you go, Sam. Put some stuff in the.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got resources in the chat there. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, net. There you go. Stephen did the whole year. What is that? 169,260. It's a lot of hours. How many of them do you think get wasted because you're too busy doing something you probably shouldn't be?
Right. Lindsay had asked, can you talk a little bit more about how you coach a year-end review? Is that kind of what we were doing on strategic planning, or were you going to go a different direction for that?
Yeah, so that was I say. So the template we have will walk you through the steps. But generally, if I'm doing a year-end review, I'm coming in with all of our numbers. So I'm looking at the financials, the sales, and the production metrics. And I'm looking at patterns. I'm looking at the seasonality, like when things went high, when things went low, how we hit versus what we missed. I'm looking at our initiatives. So what are all the projects we worked on? What got built? What didn't? What got built and didn't really like come out the way we hoped? I look at the hires we've hired and the new, overhead we've accumulated, and like who's hitting their goals, who's not, how is it working out for the team we've hired? And then we start to look at the future. We say in the next 12 months, what's the goals we want to hit? So like, okay, let's have a revenue and a profit number we want to achieve. We drop a full budget. So, whatever it would be, 10 million bucks a year at a 32% gross. We're going to spend this much on labor, subs, and material. We've got this much left for the company. We've committed overhead salaries and costs to these things. And then you start to play with the numbers. Okay, we're going to axe this idea because it didn't work out the way we thought. We're going to axe this person potentially because they didn't work out the way we thought. We're going to make room now for this hire and this new idea. Okay, let's put that into the budget and see that makes sense. Okay, and that's like a day. Like I'll spend a full day just on the numbers with my business partner. And then when we're done that, we'll say, okay, now that we've decided some of these initiatives and some of these people, let's actually look at like what's going to take to do this. And we start to work out the initiatives that we want to get into and how they're going to break down a little bit. So that's for the whole year. Now we can also, the final day, get into what's going to happen this first quarter. So we got big numbers. Second day is kind of like initiatives and details for the whole year. Third day is kind of like, what's this quarter got to look like? And what's the element of integrating Builder-Trend or CompanyCam or whatever into the company. Maybe Q1, we're going to get the demos done and we're going to introduce it to our leadership team, and that is it. Or we're going to introduce it to the one crew, and that is it. And that's Q1. We know that for that big idea, that big initiative of, gets more streamlined with our technology, that's the one thing we're going to do for Q1. And you know what? We got to hire a project manager probably before the summer hits. So why don't we in Q1 just start to build the ideal candidate profile, build some ads, and start to put out the ads by the end of the quarter. And we could do our hiring in Q2. But now you're always working on stuff that's leading somewhere, that's intentional. And you know that the stuff you're working on quarterly is leading to the things you want to hit annually. And the things you're working on annually are leading to things you want to hit in your BHAG or your painted picture. And now you're building something with purpose. Now, things change, life changes. But again, like we talked in the beginning, like if you know why you're trying to do what you're trying to do, you'll find a way. The economy can change, Trump can get in, Harris can get in, whatever. Things can happen, but you as an entrepreneur are in charge of your own reality. And it's not, you are not a product of the things that happen to you. Like I've said many times, you're part of the decisions you make as you go through it. And being, I call it like educated risk versus like uninformed risk. When you're educated around the variables involved, you can make a much higher level of like good decisions. And the bigger the business gets, the more time that kind of stuff takes.
Love it. I think I got to all the questions. As we're wrapping up here, if there are any other ones, let me know. I just want to point out a couple things. Number one, we've got some really good links already in the chat. When this goes up, for those that missed it or had to check out early, when this goes up on YouTube, we'll also make sure to put some very, very important links, just like this, resources, things that we want to share, that Danny wants to share, that the team at Breakthrough wants to share. So we'll make sure to get all of those things in there as well. So don't feel like, hey, I missed the chat, I couldn't grab the link. We'll do our best to get everything in that description as well. We have the annual, Danny, I don't know if you want to talk about the contractor quick tools or annual strategic planning tool and all that, or just know that we'll have, links to all that stuff. But yeah, I just wanted to leave room for you to talk about that.
Sure, we'll put three things in. So one is the painted picture exercise. It's like, how do you build like a 3 to 5 year vision for the company? And again, these things are pretty like, this is a PDF that's 16 pages long, and it's kind of like IKEA furniture instructions, or like step by step by step. Like here's what you do, and then it comes with a little. I think it has a little video in it. It has a example file of it fully done, and a template actually for you to build this stuff out as well. So that's for the painted picture. Similar idea for the strategic plan. So it's a 1-page strategic plan, and it has a place for you to put your like big 5-year vision or values, all those kind of things, your 1-year goals and initiatives, and then your quarterly rocks and focuses. And again, it's like step by step by step. So like if you're going to go off on a retreat, like follow the steps basically. And then the final thing we didn't talk as much about, but like this save 5 hours a week exercise, which everybody should go through to clear up, I would say 5 hours a week to work on the company. This is kind of like all of our members, they have no time. So this is like, well, how do we get 5 hours a week? If we get 5 hours a week, we can work on this stuff. And so it just walks through the exercise of what I mentioned briefly, which is like high time consumption and low skill stuff gets identified and becomes automated, delegated, or a new role is hired to take it on. So those 3 things I think should set you guys up for some success. They're free. They're good tools. Our team has built them. Our coaching team has put a lot of work into this stuff with our members, and we've kind of taken the best of the best and made like a nice instruction manual out of it. So,
no, it's fantastic. Lindsay asked real quick, any notes to share about bringing your ownership team together to work on this together, strategic planning, especially strategic planning, which she's saying ownership, partners, etc.
Make sure there's prep. Like I think that a lot of people can come into these meetings with a very like different idea of what they want to get out of that meeting, and so someone should lead it. My business partner Youre leads these for James and I, so there's 3 of us that do this together, so we do an ownership meeting. Really well done prep where I'm thinking through the numbers I'm in charge of, the initiatives I'd like to propose, the issues that I want to have a discussion around, some of the stuff that's like big topics that are going to take a few hours. I send them to Igor ahead of time, and so does James, and Igor has his own. And then he'll build a full agenda of each day, what we're going to talk about, how many hours we have for each thing, so we don't just go on tangents. And if there's things that don't fit within that agenda, he's usually calling me and saying like, is this something we need to do now, or can we do this in a quarterly review later? Or like he's prioritizing what we want to do. And then we all have the agenda ahead of time. And so that we're very clear what we're going to go cover and what to make sure we have fully like prepared to be able to make good decisions around. So prep.
That's fantastic. That's great. Like I said, we're going to grab all the stuff that you need. We'll make sure to have this in the YouTube link. And again, for those that missed it, you can check it out. We will have it up, and we will make sure to email the participants as well. So you have that link. Don't forget about the Good Contractor podcast. You can check it out on YouTube. Just look up Good Contractor, look for the big yellow logo. And you can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. But most importantly, I just want to thank Danny Kerr from Breakthrough Academy, co-founder, Just awesome, coach. I want to just call him up and just chat about a whole bunch of things because it resonates with me too. And having been both in a house with entrepreneurs of all different shapes and sizes in terms of businesses and types, and it's just been a lot of fun. So, Danny, I just want to thank you for joining us, and yeah, hope we get to do this again soon. This was a ton of fun.
John, you're awesome at what you do. This is great. Yeah, you ask good questions. You engage in the right way.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you guys. Have a great day. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.